Hello. We're in the dark at the moment because, as you would probably know, it's the dark age. Humanity, it's the dark enlightenment, right? Scoff at that one forever. Okay. Um. This is not empirical. This is what's about to be discussed is not empirical research. This is not read from actual scientific research on the subject. What it is using a metric that's used in psychology as a rough guide, so that if you do have access to the research on the subject, go out and have a look and fact check to see if there's anything, accurate about this. So a little bit of a idea was done about some of the qualities of different political ideologies and how that might represent the personalities profiles of the adherents. So, in the case of fascism, it was noted that they've got to get the foreigners out and blame them for your woes. That seems to be something that they've noticed. So they're known for blame shifting. And of course, finding another scapegoat is a type of blame shifting. So usually it's the opposition. Again, that's blame shifting behaviour. They have low tolerance for disobedience or disagreement. So that's a symptom of neuroticism. They've got a high preference for arbitrary social orders. Sort of customs, social orders, customs, and behaviour. Okay, so it's really arbitrary. So it's kind of a ritualistic and performative type of thing. Sort of almost OCD-like. It often involves cronyism, nepotism, or corruption. So there's an in-group preferential treatment and an out-group mistreatment as part of the general patterning. And almost like it sees the state as a family macrocosm of the family, and the family as a military boot camp. So sort of the control-based type parenting style, and where the dear leader acts as a sort of like a authoritarian parental figure, and they have beliefs, and that's where probably the idea of might makes right comes into it. And the ends justify the means is a distinct error on the fascist moral compass, and it is an error because the ends don't justify the means. Is a big issue that people have with it. And the in-group, out-group affiliations that, as you notice, are dichotomized in that particular way, used as to create a false social cohesion for the in-group by putting down the out-group. So they display the characteristic called superiority and inferiority complex. That would suggest that different styles going on there. So there's the big pattern appears to be neuroticism. Fascism appears to be associated with the symptom neuroticism, as well as dichotomous thinking processes. So it's a neuroticism that is associated with borderline personality disorder. So fascism is basically roughly the equivalent of borderline personality disorder. You might say that the dear leader has NPD or something similar, and you'd probably be right about that in those situations. However, it's almost as though the BPD is created in the inherence by the NPD dear leader. And so fascism functions a lot similar in effect to cults that value light versus dark and good versus evil dichotomous principles. Okay. Okay, so let's try to plot out and do a comparison to some of the different things that might happen to other social movements. So used ocean. This is an ocean, which is a metric called openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And this is not actual empirical research. This is just an idea for plotting. So, assuming like obviously the ocean tests are way more complicated than this, but just assume that those particular 5 metrics each have a Likert scale of 1 to 7, where the number 7 represents maximal amount of that particular trait. So if neuroticism was 7, they'd be extremely neurotic, and if neuroticism was 1, they wouldn't be very neurotic at all. Okay, so tried to plot it out, and it looks like fascism. This is really rough. Fascism is a 1 on openness, a 4 on conscientiousness, a 4 on extroversion, a 4 on agreeableness, and a 7 on neuroticism. Because it was comparing different political ideas, just roughly, as an idea. Social Democrats appear to be, on the surface, a 5 on openness, a 5 on conscientiousness, a 6 on extroversion, a 2 on agreeableness, and a 3 on neuroticism. Anarchists appear to be a 6 on openness, a 6 on conscientiousness, a 2 on extroversion, an average of 3 on agreeableness, but possibly ranging from 2 to 5, and a 2 on neuroticism. And authoritarian socialists, so think sort of like Stalin, okay, or Mao Zedong type societies. That'd be a 2 on openness, okay, a 3 on conscientiousness, a 1 on extroversion, a 6 on agreeableness, and a 6 on neuroticism. And last but not least, this is sometimes known as ANCAP or anarcho-capitalism, but it's best described as capitalists favouring minimalist states so the corporations don't have as much regulations. They appear to be a 3 on openness, a 2 on conscientiousness, a 5 on extroversion, a 4 on agreeableness, and a 2 on neuroticism. So as you can see, just as an idea, the idea that's being put out there is that there's personality attributes that might contribute to people's joining of particular political factions, or the creation or upswing of those political factions. This might not be the correct plot. Empirical research might suggest otherwise. However, what's likely to be the case is here there's truth to that, and fascism's well studied, and to describe it as neurotic is an understatement. And neurotic is a very correct description for it. That part is hard to ignore. Neuroticism is not necessarily anxiety in the proper sense of the term, but people that are high in neuroticism are much more likely to get anxiety disorders and display symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder, for example. So ritualistic and performative components of fascism, as well as authoritarian socialism, would probably mean that the possibility of having high neuroticism in the personalities of their cultural groups' leaders is much more likely. And so a fascist, of course, got a 7 for neuroticism, and likewise the authoritarian socialists got a 6, and probably the reason for that is that some of the anxiety in authoritarian socialist communities is reduced by the fact that they get pensions. So some of that operative conditioning type stuff is almost like a salve that reduces some of that anxiety and neuroticism, but it doesn't actually take it away because they're in a situation of control nonetheless. So, with the run of the mill, like your sort of centrist politics, social democrat type parties, okay, not necessarily Democrats proper, but that sort of rough idea. Social Democrats think more like Bernie Sanders, okay, here in America. So for them to have a 6 on neuroticism is sorry that was authoritarian socialist. To have the Social Democrat column, sorry. It's hard to read your own handwriting. It's a 3 on neuroticism for the Social Democrats. So the Bernie Sanders type characters have about a 3, which is sort of in the middle somewhere and not particularly high, sort of mid to low. So he displays neuroticism. He does have fear and anxiety, but it isn't necessarily likely to continue if the causes of that fear and anxiety are resolved. So one of the things you'll probably notice about a neurotic personality trait is that the sort of fear-based or anxiety-based rumination tendencies continue long after the fear is resolved. It's almost like they're looking for something to be afraid of, but or whatever, or they get stuck on something. So because a Bernie Sanders type character probably has a higher capacity for openness, so where that sort of like 5 comes into it for the openness type of stuff, that can balance out the neuroticism a little bit but you open to more ideas and experiences, then that might help you alleviate some of the tension that the neuroticism creates. So not that they don't have any so much as they're able to resolve it through other means. It's much more difficult for a fascist because they're very low in openness. So their neuroticism, which is quite high, is difficult to resolve because they're low in openness. Okay, so if you're not open to new ideas or experiences, no matter how neurotic you are, any neuroticism you have, you might find difficult to overcome. So that is to say that there are people in the world who are very neurotic, but nonetheless also very open to experience, and therefore they're also able to resolve that neuroticism. And those people are called philosophers. Have a nice day.